Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel opens its door to Syrian refugees. The world commemorates International Holocaust Day, and a stunning find is made in the Galilee. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with the latest news in Israel. Just yesterday, ILTV discussed how Israel has been considering taking in orphan Syrian children, and today there are reports that the government has decided to grant refugee status to save at least 100 of these traumatized kids. They'll first be given temporary resident status for 4 years, during which time they'll be integrated into Arab-Israeli families. After that, the former orphans can become permanent residents and entitled to remain in the Jewish state for the rest of their lives. The plan that's believed to have been authorized by Israeli Interior Minister Ali Adeli is now being finalized. All as government officials contact international groups to bring the children to their new safe homes. Israel has been increasingly concerned about the massive humanitarian disaster exploding just over its northern border in Syria, where the brutal civil war has been raging since 2011. At least 500,000 people have been killed, and millions of others forced to flee the Arab Republic. Israel's now provided medical care to more than 2,600 wounded Syrians, who are also given educational materials and training while they're in the country. Even though the two nations are in a formal state of war over Syria's refusal to recognize a Jewish state's right to exist, the Israeli people are wholeheartedly supporting multiple other projects aimed at helping their neighbors as much as they can. Now, the nation-state of the Jewish people is not only stepping in to offer homes for the children, but is also willing to consider the absorption of any of their immediate family members who have managed to survive. You probably remember that during his very last hours in office, former U.S. President Barack Obama authorized the allocation of $221 million to the Palestinians. Well, now Ramallah reportedly says they've been informed that they're not going to get those funds quite as fast as they expected. Aaron, what happened to the money?
Well, the funding was originally approved by Congress actually about 2 years ago, but then when the Palestinian Authority broke certain agreements with the United States, there were 2 senators in specific who froze those funds from going to the Palestinian Authority. But then, as you said, it was released by Barack Obama in the final hours of his presidency. So now you have President Trump and his administration who have refrozen the transfer, and at least until a new Secretary of State has been appointed and they can review where that money is going.
A senior Palestinian official source told the Times of Israel newspaper that Washington just quietly informed the Palestinian Authority that the Trump administration is freezing the financial aid package for the immediate future. According to the source, the State Department has been charged with reviewing the payment and might be making some adjustments to make sure it conforms with the priorities of the new White House. By ordering the funds release right before his successor was sworn in, Obama overrode Congress, which initially approved the expenditure 2 years ago, but later suspended it in a punitive measure against unilateral Palestinian moves to seek statehood. Representative Kay Granger of Texas, who sits on the House Appropriations Committee, voiced anger that Obama defied congressional oversight. Oversight that she says was trying to ensure no American taxpayer dollars will be spent by the Palestinians until very strict conditions are met. Aside from that money, though, the Palestinians still received at least $250 million in other funding from the United States government during Obama's last year in office.
Just ahead of the commemoration of International Holocaust Remembrance Day, Israeli lawmakers have been participating in a very special project that's estimated to reach 100 million people across the globe. Israeli President Reuven Rivlin and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are joining at least 200,000 other people who have so far posted poignant photos of themselves on Facebook, holding signs reading "We Remember." The participants belong to all religions and nationalities and come from nations ranging from Pakistan to Bolivia. The campaign is being sponsored by the World Jewish Congress in conjunction with the Auschwitz Museum. The images are being projected onto a screen by one of the crematoriums at Birkenau, in addition to being live streamed on social media. Israeli, American, and European politicians and celebrities are also posting their own images to send out the message that the world should never forget the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust. Meanwhile, the new president of the European Parliament is calling on all Jewish communities to remain vigilant but not fearful amid the resurgence of anti-Semitism, which many leaders see being more prevalent today than it has been at any time since World War II. International Holocaust Remembrance Day was marked in an emotional ceremony held at the European Parliament. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and European Jewish Congress President Dr. Moshe Kantor addressed the gathering and told ILTV reporter Steve Leibowitz about their concerns over the current rise in European anti-Semitism.
Yes, we are very concerned because for the first time we see the conglomeration of ultra-right, ultra-left and Islamic radicalism together. And as I told, the uniting factor of this conglomeration is one thing, the Jews. And we have to change our attitude to the new phenomena.
What do you think is the plan of action going forward in order to counter this phenomenon?
It's three directions. First of all, security of the minorities, included Jewish community, and we did it very practical, in a very practical way. Second thing is proliferation of anti-Semitism and non-proliferation, of course. And this is very important, and in this area, education has a priority. And number three, extremely important, we have to use the experience of Nuremberg. And we have to make an international tribunal upon the leaders of extremism and even soldiers of extremism, especially ideological leaders.
Put them on trial.
And put them on trial.
Tony Blair, you chose to come to Holocaust Memorial Day here at the European Parliament, and you also spoke in your speech about rising anti-Semitism in Europe. Could you tell us about that?
It's obviously very important we remember the Holocaust, but it's particularly important we remember it at a time when anti-Semitism is on the rise in Europe today, where you have Jewish people leaving Europe. And this is a matter of not just sadness to people like myself, but it's a call to action to make sure that we defeat the challenge of anti-Semitism, of hatred and prejudice everywhere. And today is the right day to express these words and to commit to act upon them.
Now here's a very interesting story. Israel's Central Bureau of Statistics just revealed the most recent data regarding the number of people who survived the Holocaust still living in the Jewish state today. It's actually more difficult to come up with a precise number than one might think, because of the criteria that's used to try and measure different levels of suffering. Today, there are still 200,000 Jewish victims who were exposed to the murderous Nazi regime living in Israel. The Census Department divides the survivors into three basic categories. There are about 63,000 Israelis who came from Europe, where they endured the horrors of concentration and extermination camps, or were forced to live in ghettos or in hiding during 1933 to 1945. Another 30,000 are refugees who fled their homes just in time to escape the genocide of the Jewish people, while there are 109,000 people who managed to survive living in countries conquered by the Third Reich. Many people don't realize that this last group includes about 60,000 Israelis from the North African nations of Morocco, Tunisia, and Libya. Sadly, the elderly survivors are now passing away, and demographic experts say that by the year 2020, the number of people who personally lived through the nightmare of the Holocaust will diminish by 23%. January 27th is the annual International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and in honor of those who have tragically perished, a very special book has been created. Joining me today to talk about this newly released text, a very heavy one in fact, called "And Every Single One Was Someone," is CEO and owner of Geffen Publishing House, Elon Greenfield. Elon,
Shalom.
Thank you so much for coming in. Here, I'll pass this to you so you can talk to us a little bit about it. Tell us about this incredible book.
Well, the book has in it one word, and the one word is a three-letter word that says Jew. and it appears in the book 6 million times. And while on one hand people would say it makes the Holocaust, it makes the whole issue very impersonal, I think it is the contrary. This book is the only book in the world that mentions every single one of those who perished in the Holocaust. And we've received letters and emails and phone calls from people saying, wow, I had this book and my uncle is mentioned in it. Because if we would try and publish the names of the people who perished in the Holocaust, who were murdered in the Holocaust, think of it, the word Jew has 3 letters. If we would put Yosel Chaim Rabinovitz, we would have a book that would come up to here. And no one could even carry it. As it is, it's a very large book, it's a very heavy book, and part of its presence is the massive piece that it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's what makes this so outstanding almost. It's a way of kind of showing just how many lives were lost. Physically, when you hold this book, it's heavy, it looks massive, obviously. And just like you said, to be able to include every name, you'd have a book this high, right? So this is something that people can actually take home to remind them of what took place. I mean, it's crazy. How many pages are there in this book?
Okay, so if you look, again, it's difficult to look at the book from the outside, but the book has in it, it says here at the beginning, each page has 4,800 times the word Jew in it. There are 40 columns, 120 lines, and there are 1,250 pages. Wow. So one of the items and one of the ways that this book could be used as an educational tool is when you sit in a classroom in a university and there are 300 or 400 students in the class, you can show them that this amount, a very small portion of this page, represents 300 people. Right. And then you go and you look through the book and you say, it is amazing how many classes are in this book. And if you take a football stadium that has 70,000 people, it's just incomprehensible. One of the problems that I found is that it is almost impossible to explain to people what the number 6 million is. When we hear of a car accident and 2 people were hurt, it's very easy for us as human beings to relate to that. Because we hear 2 names, we can put the faces behind that, and it's very sad, but it's understandable for us because we can grasp that number. When there is a terror attack and 10 or 20 or 30 people are hurt, it already becomes less personal for us. It's very difficult for us to grasp it. When there's a tsunami of 10,000 casualties, we're totally almost oblivious to it because it's so big that we cannot relate to it. And here we have a number that's 6 million.
What's interesting is that I saw on the front page, I mean, when you open the book, it says this is number 2,000 and something out of 6 million books that I imagine have been sold, correct?
No. What we have done, if we look at the book inside, we have made a page that will make the book very personal for many people. Meaning, one of the ways of using this book is of me taking this book and dedicating the book to someone who I know who perished in the Holocaust, someone who was murdered, a family member or anybody else. So in classrooms, what people do is we ask the teachers to give each student a name that they have to choose from the Holocaust who was murdered and died in the Holocaust. They do some research, and then they dedicate the book to that person. Now this book becomes a memorial for that one Holocaust.
So how many copies of this book have been distributed so far? Do you have a number?
Yes, we have distributed probably between 5,000 and 6,000 copies so far.
Wow.
And we're continuing. Every book is numbered by hand, 1 out of 6 million. And what we've done with certain communities, we've allocated them 1,000 copies, and as they go along and distribute them, they buy 50 at a time.
Right.
So a certain community will have the number 12,000 to 13,000.
So I guess my final question for you is, what is the main message that you hope people take away from this book if they choose to take it home?
I would say that the main message here is that we must never forget, as a son of a survivor, who went through 4 camps, through Theresienstadt, Auschwitz, worked in Hamburg as a laborer, and then was released in Bergen-Belsen. I think it is our job of this generation to make sure that no one may forget the atrocities and what happened during the Holocaust. And with Holocaust deniers that we see that are coming every other week, every other month, I think we have to remember, and a book like this in every home, it's not that you have to read it every day, but when you go to your library and take another book to read, you see it and you have that memory and you remember something that we must never forget. If I may add one thing, a few months ago, the Mein Kampf was reissued in Germany. And all the academics came out and said that it's very good because one has to study and learn the reasons of what happened. And when I was interviewed on CNN, I said, look, the worst thing that could happen is that under the academic auspices, this book will become a bestseller. And sure enough, 6 months later, Mein Kampf became a bestseller and sold over 80,000 copies. I do not believe that the people who bought it were all academics trying to do research. I think there's an undertone of anti-Semitism, and people want to read that again because they enjoy it. And this book serves as something against that, because this book shows you that 6 million lives were murdered. They didn't just go away. They were murdered by other human beings who were very bright people who were very cultured people. But because of anti-Semitism, because of what happened in Europe then, they took the lives of 6 million other people, which if they were all alive today, we would have had another 30 or 40 million Jews living around this world.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that if I were to be going to the library or bookstore, this would be standing out to me 100% because I think this is something very special and important that you guys have created, and I hope that I can get a copy myself.
Thank you very much. I hope you do, and I hope you keep it at home. And
I will. I absolutely will. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much. Shalom.
Now, this is a terrifying story for you. The Israeli public has been on a desperate race to save the life of a young Canadian-Israeli citizen who's being imprisoned in an unnamed Arab country on murder charges. The military censor has just released details on the case for the first time. What's known is that 21-year-old Tel Aviv resident Ben Hassine left Israel to visit his grandparents in an Arab state, which has no diplomatic ties to the Jewish state. He later decided to stay on to join forces fighting the ISIS terror group. Then a local taxi driver reportedly tried to kill him after discovering his Israeli nationality, when overhearing him speak Hebrew on his phone. Hassine's father Elon says his son then shot the assailant in self-defense. Hassine has been in prison since June of 2015, and if convicted of murder, he could face the death penalty. According to some sort of behind-the-scenes deal, if his family pays a driver's family $120,000 by Sunday, when the next hearing is held, he may be released. After the case came to the attention of the Israeli public, the entire amount has already been raised, and Israel's Zaka Rescue and Emergency Response Organization says the funds will be delivered by the deadline. We'll try to keep you updated on further details as soon as they become available. The Israeli Defense Establishment has just completed the successful tests of an advanced version of its David Sling intermediate missile interceptor system that's being jointly developed with the United States. The system is designed to shoot down rockets with 63 to 125-mile ranges, such as those in Hezbollah's deadly weapons arsenal. The Iranian-backed terrorists are based just over Israel's northern frontier with Lebanon and launched their last war with the Jewish state 11 years ago. David Sling is being developed by Israel's state-owned Rafael Advanced Defense Systems and the top U.S. arms maker Raytheon. It can also shoot down any aircraft or low-flying cruise missiles. The advanced testing includes the interception of air-launched incoming target missiles high over the Mediterranean Sea, in a simulation of any potential future threats. Military officials say the latest system fills any gaps between the already deployed Iron Dome short-range rocket interceptor, which was used extensively with high success rates in the 2014 Gaza conflict with Hamas, and the Arrow 3. That Star Wars-like extension of Israel's capabilities became operational just last week and is designed to safely destroy incoming long-range missiles and their nuclear, biological, or chemical payloads in outer space. There's been another stunning find in the hills of the Galilee of a cavern loaded with glittering stalactites. Quarry rehabilitation workers for the Israel Nature and Parks Authority just discovered the cavern, and those who've been lucky enough to have seen it for themselves are describing the experience as not only exciting but also very moving. The entire underground passage is said to be about 26 by 13 feet around and filled with stalactites and stalagmites, as well as incredibly rare coral reef caverns and other rock formations, including one that looks like elephant ears. Even more amazing is that the cave is still active, meaning that the dripping of deposits is still happening. So even more of the stone icicles will be created over time. It usually takes thousands and thousands of years for the natural phenomena to form. The land of Israel has several such caves, and its most impressive one is just outside of Jerusalem, where some of the stalactites are at least 300,000 years old. That's old, and as long as 13 feet. Right now, Antiquities authorities are working on mapping and documenting the newest site, and until they found a way to properly safeguard the subterranean treasure trove, it won't be open to the public because all geological and archaeological areas are protected by Israeli law to be preserved for all the future generations to come. Everyone knows what it's like to lose something, and sometimes the worst feeling in the world is getting home and unpacking just to realize that something small but significant is missing. Well, worry no more, because with Gear Eye, you'll never have that problem again. In the studio today is Julia Lerner, the CEO and founder of Gear Eye, to tell us more about her incredible innovation. Thanks so much for coming in.
Hi, Natasha. Thanks for inviting me here.
So let's begin. What is Gear Eye? Tell us about what you've created.
Gear Eye is something that helps you to track your items, to find them with tiny RFID stickers, the device which we invented, and smartphone application.
So you can take these stickers and put them on basically any item. It doesn't just have to be your camera. It can be any item that they fit onto.
Anything it fits.
That's incredibly amazing, because for people like me who lose their keys, or I'm always searching for something, I could just put a sticker like that on whatever it is that I lose and be able to track it down. Interesting. So what inspired you to come up with this idea?
Once I received the regular mail and envelope, and when I opened it, I realized that my passport is inside, and I didn't notice that it's absent.
Oh.
So I understand that there is a common problem and it needs to be solved somehow. Absent-minded people like me always search for something when they lead to the airport, or I always leave my credit cards in a cafe. It's a huge problem.
All right, so what are some of the items that you've tested out using this gear on?
My passport, of course, my wallet, credit cards, driving license. You could put it on your keys, put it on your equipment. If you're a frequent traveler, you can put it on your Kindle, on your pills, on anything you own and want to be tracked, anything which is precious to you.
Wow. Okay, so where and when will Gear Eye be available?
We've just finished our successful Kickstarter campaign. We hit our goal like 900%. So we decided to continue on Indiegogo, and you can make a pre-order on Indiegogo now.
Great. And it will be available immediately? I mean, this is something that we could start using?
No, you need to wait till we finish manufacturing.
Okay. All right. Well, I think I could wait a little bit longer. This seems like something that would be very useful for me, and I'm sure many of our viewers. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Earlier today, the island of Crete was hit with a 5.4 magnitude earthquake, and because Israel lies close to a fault line, the Jewish state is no stranger to a shake here and there either. So today's word is lir'od, meaning to shake or shiver. Now, like I said, getting a reidat adama or earthquake is unfortunately fairly common in the Middle East. But that's not the only way Israelis experience the shivers. You can lir'od when it's cold and you're waiting for the bus, or you can lir'od when you're at a club and your favorite groove comes on. No matter how you decide to shake and quake though, just remember to try to keep your arms and legs confined to your personal space and lir'od safely. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
Tonight will be rainy with a chance of thunderstorms and a low of 52 or 8 degrees Celsius. Over the weekend, the winter weather is expected to return as the storms continue and the temperatures drop to an unseasonably cold high of around 59 or 15 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.78 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you tonight.